Good afternoon, members. Sorry for being a bit late. We've got a quorum already, so may I now call the meeting to order. Agenda item number 1, confirmation of minutes. We had a meeting on the 21st of January this year. The minutes have already been issued to members and the Secretariat hasn't received any proposals for amendments. So can we confirm the minutes, please? Thank you. Item 2, information papers issued since the last meeting. In fact, there are 3. Submission from the Beauty Industry Reform Research and Development Committee and the administration's reply. This is paper CB 1994-1314-01. And then information paper on proposed amendments to the schedules to the Patents Ordinance, Registered Designs Ordinance, Trademarks Ordinance, and Layout Design Topography of Integrated Circuits, Designation of Qualifying Countries, Territories, or Areas Regulation. And that's paper CB 11062-1314-01. And then the last one, administration's paper on UN sanctions, Liberia Regulation 2014, and United Nations sanctions, Liberia Regulation 2013, Regulation paper 1092-01. Paper 1062 relates to technical amendments to the relevant ordinances in order to update the list in the Paris Convention and the list in the schedule with regard to WTO members. The 4 items of subsidiary legislation will be tabled in this Council for negative vetting before the middle of 2014. Next item on the agenda. Date of next meeting and items for discussion. The next meeting will be held on the 15th of April, 2:30 p.m. And we will be discussing progress report on the implementation of the dedicated fund on branding, upgrading, and domestic sales. And then the next item will be implementation of the recommendations of the Task Force on Manpower Development of the Retail Industry. So these are for the meeting on the 15th of April. Next item on the agenda, consideration of an overseas duty visit. Now, the Secretariat has prepared some information for us concerning innovation technology industry and intellectual property system in Israel. And we have Ms. Ng from the Library and Research Services Division with us. So can you please briefly take us through the paper? Ms. Ng, please. Yes, thank you, Chairman. The Research Office has prepared the information note on how the Israeli government encourages innovation and technology and also the intellectual property system in Israel. Israel is a well-known innovation and technology hub, and there was the Chief Scientific Officer's Office to encourage R&D. The Israeli government provides funding and tax incentives to encourage local and foreign investors to invest in R&D and INT. In fact, there are many startup companies in Israel, 4,800, and Israel is only second to the Silicon Valley in this regard, and most of these companies are high-tech companies. And then concerning the venture capital industry in Israel, it has also helped promote INT between 2003 to 2012. 53 billion Hong Kong dollars of capital was raised. And usually the investment is in semiconductors, IT, I&T, medical equipment, and so on and so forth. With regard to technological transfer, many Israeli universities have established technology transfer companies which take the research output of academic researchers and make it available to companies for commercial applications. The Weizmann Institute of Sciences commercial arm, Ida Research and Development Company Limited, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's technology transfer arm, ISM Limited, are among the highest earning technology transfer organizations in the world. Coming to intellectual property, Israel has adopted international standards. According to the 2013-2014 World Competitiveness Report, out of the 140 odd economies in the world, Israel ranks the 34th concerning protection of intellectual property. And Israel is also a member of the World Intellectual Property Organization. In 2011, Israel ranked 17th in the world in the number of international patent applications. And from the year 2000 to the year 2010, Israel ranked 20th in the number of patent applications relative to GNP. And there is the Patents Office responsible for processing patent applications and related applications. In 2012, the Israel Patent Office approved over 3,000 patent applications. The term of a granted patent is about 20 years, and then trademarks 10 years, and then there can be extensions. And then 15 years for other types of design. All right, do members think we should have this duty visit? Charles Mock? Yes, Chairman. I was not at the meeting when this issue was discussed last time. And in fact, if I had been asked to choose one country for the visit, I would have chosen Israel. Now, in fact, Israel has surpassed us in these fields, and that's why it's worthwhile paying a visit to Israel. But then I think we need to consider which places we should visit. There are a few things that we should learn from Israel. First of all, capital investment. How to establish their venture capital business, what laws there should be to attract foreign investments. We shouldn't just be looking at the latest technology. We need to look at their public policies, because after all, EDGCO is concerned about policies, and we shouldn't only be looking at technological exhibitions. And then I know that many companies have established their I&T bases in Israel, and each of these companies employs a few thousand people at least. So we don't want to just go there and take some photos. And then technological transfer, I think that's also of interest to us, and I think we should concentrate on policies. Thank you. Mr. Low Wai Kwok. Chairman, thank you. In fact, last time, I said that we should visit Israel to look at I&C and also the commercialization of R&D results. Israel population is not much bigger than that of Hong Kong, and yet it has established a status as an I&T center. And I agree with Mr. Charles Mock. We shouldn't just be visiting the laboratories there, the high-tech laboratories there. I think we should look at the government's I&T policies, in particular how the government encourages the private sector to invest in R&D. And we also need to look at how the government has succeeded in attracting major companies to set up their operations there to carry out R&D. I know our government is conservative. In fact, we proposed over a decade ago that for R&D expenses there should be tax deductions 2 times, 3 times, but then the government hasn't done anything.
On technology transfer from academia to industry, again, I think we should look into this regard, because science should not be trapped in the ivory tower. It should be commercialized, and also it should be promoted globally. So apart from government policy and technology transfer, also should serve as our reference. So I think our visit should also include this part. We can contact the relevant parallel agencies, and the representatives from the relevant industries can exchange with us. Ms. Emily Lau. I agree with the 2 members who have spoken. Yes, we could do a visit, because this panel share a lot of viewpoints on this issue, but we need to form a meeting, Chairman, with you presiding over it, to focus on the issues that should be discussed. And I'm also interested in understanding more about the business sector's participation there, and how they're not alleged of government business collusion, because government officials are sometimes very concerned about these allegations. So what can be done to attract the business sector to take part in it? Next, Mr. Felix Chung. Thank you, Chairman. To learn from others, to look at what others have done in terms of innovation technology, we should do it. But in terms of security, I just want to point out that if we are conducting a visit in terms of security, something should be done. Next, Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I think we should not talk about all these conspiracy theories, government business collusion, etc., even before we set off. If there is no collaboration between the business sector and the government, we could do nothing at all. So let's not always talk about government business collusion. If the government doesn't support the industry, there is no industrial development, and there are no jobs left. So the government must support industrial development. On R&D, we talked about South Korea, Israel, and Belgium. And South Korea takes a more focused approach on R&D, on tablet and other computer components. They have done a good job, and their government also has some policies to support industrial development, in particular R&D. For Israel, they cover a wider scope. For the Israeli government, every year the allocation for R&D is quite high. It's higher than that in South Korea. So I also agree to the visit. We have good companies in Hong Kong, even public listed companies in Hong Kong participating in R&D over there. They commend quite highly the work done by the Israeli government. So we don't need to worry about the things mentioned by Mr. Felix Chung. In fact, their security is quite good. It's safer to travel on an Israeli flight than other airliners. But since the issues have been raised, we should all be careful. And still, I think Israel would be a good destination for our duty visit. We should not just look at certain R&D organizations. If possible, we should have some semi-official sessions so that we can widen our horizons. So according to members, we agree that we should pay a duty visit to Israel. They are a high-tech country, and we talked about attracting talents, attracting foreign investments, etc. What about the time? We are in mid-March, approaching the end of March. If we are to organize such a visit, when will it be held? The Israeli consular has expressed to us that they would like us to visit the parliament as well. But I understand that the parliament there will come into a recess in May. For how long, Chairman? From the 11th of May to the 3rd of August. Is that the case? I'm sorry. The summer session is between the 11th of May and the 3rd of August. In session, that is. I mean, it is in session until the 3rd of August. And towards the end of the session, just like our council, the agenda will be very heavy. So maybe somewhere in July, mid-July or the end of July. What about us, our council? Our session for the council ends at the 9th of July. What about after the council retires? What about the 21st? I think the week of 21st is better than the week of 28th. So can we prepare in time? There is a lot to prepare, and as Ms. Emily Lau said, we should hold a special meeting if we were to go on this visit. We should go through the issues that we would like to explore and any other items recommended by members. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Well, Chairman, you speak to the consular first. Maybe after the LegCo ends in July, and you can ask whether it's convenient for them if we go on the last week in July. And to go in parallel, you can at the same time hold a meeting to go through the technical aspects. If the consular says 21st is okay, 28th is not, we can make certain arrangements. So let's say the meeting goes on or the council meeting goes on from the 9th to, say, the 12th or the 13th. We can then see out of the 21st and the week of 28th, which one is better. Yes, Mr. Martin Liao. Now, according to my diary, on the 21st, for the week of the 21st, there are 3 panel meetings. I might not attend all, but still. So let's see which week is the best, is the most suitable, whether it's 21st or the 28th. So let's pick the 2 dates, 21st and 28th, and then we can talk to the consular and see if it's convenient to them. And if we decide to conduct this visit, we will ask for their recommendations where to visit, and we'll come back with more information and discuss with members when the visit will take place and what will be covered, and the security issue raised by Mr. Felix Chung will also be related. Any other comments? If not, then tentatively it's 21st or 28th. What is the summer break, or when is the summer break? For how long? If we can't make it before July, what about September or early October? Their parliament resumes on the 26th of October. In September and October, the weather is better. If we're talking about October, that will be the end of October when the Council or the Parliament resumes on the 26th. And by then our Council would have resumed as well. So is it either the 21st and the 28th of July? These two dates is either 21st or the 28th of July. If there are no further comments, we'll pick these two dates and then talk to the consular. They will be in session all the way to the 3rd of August. They will have a summer session. That means it will be in session from the 3rd of May to the 3rd of August. Sorry, I misunderstood it. All right, if that is the case, then let's wrap up this item. Item 5, promotion of inward investment. We'll invite the administration in first. First of all, may I welcome Mr. Andrew Wong, Permanent Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Ms. Carol Yun, Deputy Secretary, and Mr. Simon Galpin, Director General of Investment Promotion, and Ms. Victoria Tang, Assistant Director General of Investment Promotion. So, PS, are you ready to walk us through the paper? Thank you, Chairman. So I'll make it brief. I am delighted to attend this panel meeting to brief members on the work of Invest Hong Kong in 2013 and outlines the way forward for 2014. Invest Hong Kong's mission is to spearhead Hong Kong's efforts to attract and retain foreign direct investment and to promote Hong Kong's advantages and to as an international business hub and to assist overseas companies to set up and expand their business operations in Hong Kong. We have helped over 3,000 enterprises in setting up their business operations in Hong Kong. For the first year, over 34,000 positions were created. Last year, the global economy went on recovery, but the pace was still low, and still the Invest Hong Kong had been able to attract 337 enterprises from mainland Taiwan and overseas to expand or start their business in Hong Kong, and it is a record-breaking high. So it confirms our effort in promoting inward investment. It also shows we have good fundamentals and good advantages and a favorable business environment to attract overseas enterprises to start their or expand their business operations in Hong Kong. This year, the external economy remains unstable, and still, despite the challenges, the Invest Hong Kong will continue to attract overseas mainland and Taiwan companies in investing in Hong Kong, and at the same time it will be in line with the overall policy objectives in terms of IT or ICT, financial services, etc. And these sectors which enjoys a clear competitive advantage will take a focused approach. And for emerging markets like Asian market, this will also be our focus. We will leverage on the opportunities and grasp the potential, and we will also promote ourselves in the international leading business hub to attract more business enterprises to set up their global or regional headquarters in Hong Kong. And I'll invite the Director General to brief us on the work for the next year. Over to you.
2013 was a significant year for us at Invest Hong Kong. The department reached an important milestone. We achieved our 3,000th project during our 14th year of operation. And we assisted a record number of 337 overseas and mainland companies to set up and expand their business in Hong Kong. These 337 investment projects led to the creation of 2,897 jobs within the first year of operation, and they brought in more than $12.5 billion of direct investment. The companies and projects that we assisted came from a record number of 41 different economies. Mainland China continued to be the largest single source of investment, with a total of 71 completed investment projects. This was followed by the US with 48 projects, Japan with 37, UK with 36, and France with 16. In terms of the business sectors where we have seen investment, we've had a large number of projects from the tourism and hospitality industry, and we've also seen a good number from the transport and industrial sectors, particularly the mainland companies come from those sectors. We've seen strong growth also in the number of projects from the innovation and technology sectors within the department. Hong Kong's institutional strengths and our business-friendly environment have meant that we've seen companies from a wide spectrum coming to Hong Kong. We've continued to see large multinationals not just putting their Asia-Pacific headquarters in Hong Kong. Many are starting to put some global operations, global functions here. But we've also seen a very steady growth in the number of entrepreneur-led businesses and startups, where foreign entrepreneurs are coming to Asia and choosing Hong Kong as their starting place to start their business. In terms of our activities overseas, we continue to approach target companies in a number of geographic markets. We use our investment promotion units within the 14 of the economic and trade offices, and where we don't have government offices, we use part-time consultants in 13 different locations. Altogether, our overseas colleagues and network have met with over 6,000 meetings in the past year, one-on-one meetings with potential investors. And, we focused particularly on a few key sectors where we see strong growth and strong potential. Financial services has been a focus, innovation and technology, and also the creative industry sector. We organize a lot of sector-focused events, highlighting opportunities in different sectors in Hong Kong, but we also work in very close cooperation with other government departments and other supporting organizations such as the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the Financial Services Development Council, and of course the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks. A new focus for Invest Hong Kong in the past year has been to really look at how we support startup entrepreneurs. And in 2013, we embarked on a worldwide initiative which we call Start Me Up HK. And this included a range of activities, including an integrated social media-led marketing campaign, a new website platform aimed at providing information to potential investors and entrepreneurs, and a Start Me Up venture program, a business plan competition, which we launched last year. And at first we anticipated we'd have around 100 entries. We actually had well over 380 entries from 39 markets for that program. On the mainland, we have conducted 21 seminars in 17 mainland cities, including Wuhan, Zhengzhou, Wuxi, Guangzhou, Xiamen, Guiyang, Haikou, Nanning, Changsha, etc. And we've seen a growing number of companies from the mainland using Hong Kong as a platform to go global. On the mainland, we had well over 1,500 individual meetings with potential and existing investors. We also work in very close cooperation with our counterparts on the mainland, and we've done a number of joint promotions with Guangdong, Jiaoqing, and Guangzhou in cities like Berlin, Taipei, and Auckland. Taiwan is a market that's showing steady growth. Last year, we reached out to 260 Taiwanese enterprises that have an interest in setting up and expanding in Hong Kong. Emerging markets are also a focus, and we've strengthened our small team in the Economic and Trade Office in Singapore to ensure that we can reach out to more companies across ASEAN. Looking ahead to this year, we aim to further increase our target of completed projects from 330, which was our target for 2013, to 350 in 2014. And we're positive that in this case, Hong Kong sound fundamentals and the upturn in the global economy will help us to achieve this target. In terms of our priority sectors, we continue to focus on financial services, on creative industries, on the ICT and technology sectors, and we aim to particularly try to attract venture capital, digital marketing, and fintech, financial services technology companies to Hong Kong. Our geographic focus, well, we'll continue to focus on the mainland, but also ASEAN, France, in partnership with the TDC as part of their Think Asia, Think Hong Kong promotions. We also aim to take a group to Israel, because Israel is a great place for startups, London, and also the US. We also continue to promote Hong Kong as an ideal platform for mainland companies to go global, and we'll be targeting not just the leading cities, but some of the second-tier cities where we see a lot of high-growth companies interested in using Hong Kong. We want to foster even closer partnership with the Economic and Trade Offices, with the TDC, but also the tourism boards, Cyberport, and Create Hong Kong, to ensure that we give the companies that we're helping all the support we can in a very coordinated way. Finally, it's not just about bringing new companies to Hong Kong. A big part of our work is also to work with the existing companies, the ones that are already here, to help them to grow and encourage them to expand and upgrade their presence to use Hong Kong for regional and global functions. Thank you.
唔該晒處長。而家到委員會。
Thank you very much. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Promoting inward investment is something that the government must do. After the financial tsunami in particular, the economic landscape in many countries changed. And I understand that a lot of policies to attract inward investments also changed. Singapore is more aggressive than Hong Kong in this regard. So I would like to ask this question. Now, I'm not saying that we should always compare ourselves with Singapore, but I think what is most important is that we should be able to attract quality companies to set up their operations in Hong Kong so that more job opportunities can be provided to the local people. So have you considered tax incentives, other incentives? And also incentives to attract R&D. I understand that many countries do offer such incentives to investors. Now, Hong Kong always claims that it has a free economy. It is a and we give the business sector the best support that we can. But it seems that that's all we are doing. Chairman, now we have just said that Israel and South Korea have done a marvelous job in terms of R&D and INT. So I want to know whether the SAR government is going to adjust its strategy. In the past few months, many people told me that even if they already had plans to come to invest in Hong Kong, they decided to wait and see. They are worried about, say, the Occupy Central movement. They are concerned about the stability and prosperity of the urban areas in Hong Kong. So these are genuine concerns. I want to know how you're going to deal with such a situation. And then some companies have said that because of the tough measures, it's expensive for them to buy an office in Hong Kong. And some are concerned about the air quality problem. Some are concerned about the lack of international school places here. So how are you going to adjust your strategy to attract inward investment? Yes, I think I will invite the Director General to reply because he has more experience in dealing with companies interested in coming to Hong Kong. We do have policies to encourage inward investment. Now, for example, in terms of R&D, we have the ITF. And for the creative industries, we have different funds to try to attract investments. Now, for example, we do have tax rebate programs which we can recommend to potential investors. As to how we compare with our competitors, perhaps the Director General can tell you more. Director General, please.
It's certainly true that Hong Kong has to go head-to-head with Singapore when we're attracting many of the investment projects. And in many respects, we have a similar offering to Singapore in terms of our rule of law, our relatively low tax, and so on. Where Hong Kong has an advantage is in our geographic location. The fact that we're part of China, the fact that companies can access not only the leading cities in Northeast Asia, but also many of the cities in Southeast Asia. And Hong Kong actually is closer, as we know, to some of the Southeast Asian capitals than Singapore. So we have a geographic edge, but it's also true that Singapore is quite proactive in offering individual tax incentives to individual companies. Many of the companies tell us that they would prefer a level playing field approach because if Singapore were to offer one company a certain incentive, there's no reason for them to then not offer an even better incentive to that company's competitor a few months down the line. So in Hong Kong, it's very much a question of what you see is what you get. And of course, we do offer incentives for companies that do want to engage in R&D, matching funding for that, for companies that also wish to engage in design and other types of projects. But those incentives are offered in an even way to Hong Kong, mainland, and overseas companies in exactly the same way. And generally, most of our investors appreciate that. On the office cost issue, the headline figures that are often reported around the world about some of the record-breaking office rentals in Hong Kong are a challenge for us. It often means that companies assume that only the biggest multinationals can afford to have a base in Hong Kong. What we have to try and explain, though, is that even though Hong Kong is a small place, there is a tremendous range of different office accommodation options at very different prices, even within quite a small area. And by focusing on startup entrepreneurs, if we can show that they can be successful and grow a business in Hong Kong from a startup, then also we can get across the message to SMEs and medium-sized companies that Hong Kong shouldn't be a barrier for them in terms of office cost.
Okay, thank you. 跟住落嚟，莫乃光議員。
Thank you. Mr. Charles Mock, thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the US. I went to San Francisco and New York, and I went to the two ETOs. And I met the bureau people as well as the Invest Hong Kong people in the ETOs. I can see that each office has to cover a very wide or big geographical area, but then the staffing level is not very high. I don't know how we compare ourselves with Singapore Industry Guard. Now we keep telling the government to do a better job, but it seems that they don't have enough staff in the overseas offices. And then concerning Start Me Up Hong Kong, and judging from other reports, we can see that we are quite attractive to startups, maybe more attractive than Singapore to startups. But then we hope that we can also be competitive concerning the bigger companies. And also it's important that there is a good venture capital in the business here.
And I also understand Invest Hong Kong has been trying hard to attract them. And I talked to people, the ETOs in the that over there, and it seems that they don't understand very well. And some big enterprises would like to come to Hong Kong. I won't name any names, but in terms of the structure, for example, which government department in Hong Kong is responsible for which area, and who should I contact, which department, they don't know very well. I understand that enterprise has been discussing with the government for a long time, but yet they don't know which government department they should approach. So much time is spent on hand-holding. My concern is, have you assessed the establishment and see if will you have sufficient manpower for the job, or will you ask for more resources to expand your establishment? For example, there may be experts in Hong Kong that who may help you through video conferencing. For example, you may have met the counterpart for 2 or 3 times, and you need to explain in greater detail to them the situation in Hong Kong. So you can engage the professionals in those sectors to help you with the promotion, because sometimes government officials may not be bold enough to, say certain things, and the practitioners in the sector may be more frank with them. P.S. Director General?
It's true that we're spread pretty thinly around the world when it comes to our consultants and small teams within the economic and trade offices. But we are encouraged that we are expanding our small team in Singapore. Of course, there will be the new ETO in Wuhan, which will have an investment promotion team. And we're encouraged by the fact that we can use these resources to reach out to more companies. We don't try to do everything ourselves at Invest Hong Kong. We believe in partnership, so we also leverage on our investment promotion ambassadors, and we have a number of leading business figures that speak on our behalf and act as mentors to companies that are looking for advice when they set up. We also, when we do seminars overseas, invite local service providers to come and give much more in-depth advice and support to companies, particularly when we do events on the mainland, advice on how to list, advice on particular tax structures that they can enjoy by having a presence in Hong Kong. So we see ourselves as a coordinator, but we don't try to do everything in-house, and we think there's a lot of support that we can enjoy from both the private but also other public sector organizations.
Next, Mr. Felix Chung. Thank you, Chairman. In para 7, para 8 of the paper, states that to promote or showcase the strength of Hong Kong as an innovation and technology hub, and also to showcase our position as an art and creative industries hub. But it's questionable whether we're indeed an IT hub and an art and creative industries hub. Have we attained such a high status? I can say that we're still some distance away to call ourselves a hub. And for business startups, I'd like to know more how you attract business startups. If you attract overseas startup companies, many young people overseas would like to start their own businesses. So at the same time, when you attract overseas startups, how do you help local startups, Director General?
What we're trying to do is the startup community in Hong Kong is growing very fast. We've seen the number of entrepreneurs applying for investor visas grow by 60% since 2010. We've seen our caseload of companies that are entrepreneur-led businesses also grow by 59%. And we've seen the number of co-work spaces and incubators in Hong Kong, both private and public sector, grow from 3 in 2010 to around 24 today. This is a very, very rapid growth, and we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs coming to Hong Kong to start these new businesses, and our job is to make sure that they get the information, advice and support that they need. There is quite a lot of support, but it's not always immediately apparent to somebody that hasn't grown up in Hong Kong and doesn't have the family, alumni and friends support network that local entrepreneurs have. Whenever we're doing initiatives to support startups, these initiatives, including the venture program, the business plan competition, is also open to local startup entrepreneurs as well as foreign startup entrepreneurs. And for us, it's about plugging these startup entrepreneurs into the private sector initiatives and co-work spaces that are opening all across Kennedy Town and Sheung Wan, but also into the support mechanisms that our Science Park and Cyberport have to incubate new companies.
Yes, P.S. Let me supplement. Of course, innovation and technology and creative industries are the industries which we would like to promote under the government policy. So the overall policy objective is such that Invest Hong Kong launch regular projects to attract overseas enterprises in these two industries to come to Hong Kong. Apart from local business companies, we would also like to attract inward investments to come to invest in these two industries. So this is part of the regular work of Invest Hong Kong. As for the other question put by Mr. Felix Chung, for startup companies in Hong Kong, if I remember correctly, in this year's budget announced by the Financial Secretary, there is a project, not through Invest Hong Kong, but through the OGCIO. A platform will be provided to help local business startups. In particular, the ICT business startups, they will be supported. So, Chairman, I have a question for Director General. He talked about the increase from 3 to 24 startup enterprises coming to Hong Kong. Can I have more information? Which industries do they belong, and which countries do they belong?
Clarify, the increase from 3 to 24 are these co-work spaces. These are locations where startups can work in an open plan environment. They're basically incubators, and they are copies of similar support mechanisms that you see in Silicon Valley, London and New York. And these are run by private sector entrepreneurs. To give you examples, there are organizations like Cocoon, The Nest, The Hive, and these are very interesting private sector initiatives that have been springing up all over Hong Kong to support the startup ecosystem.
Mr. Zhong, you would like to have a list, right? Yes, a list of the 24.
The list, it's growing very fast, but we'll give you the list of the startup co-work spaces that we're aware of as of now.
Yes, thank you, Director General. Next, Mr. Martin Liao. Thank you, Chairman. About paragraph 5 of the paper, we can see that Invest Hong Kong will continue to promote industries where Hong Kong has competitive edge, in particular financial services, innovation technology, as well as creative industry sectors. Now, for these three industries and sectors, there is a relatively shortage of manpower. And then from another paragraph, I can see that apart from encouraging overseas enterprises to set up and expand their business operations in Hong Kong, Invest Hong Kong also provides a one-to-one follow-up service to these enterprises. So on the recruitment of local professionals by foreign enterprises, what has the Invest Hong Kong done in, say, supporting the nurturing of talents? Yes, Director General?
It's true that when companies are coming to Hong Kong, they're looking to recruit local talent. Generally speaking, the foreign companies and the mainland companies that we're bringing in are looking to recruit quality people and to create well-paid jobs. So we advise them on how to go about recruitment. We give them advice and information on salary costs. And then if they're looking to engage people, we would normally signpost them to a short list of executive search firms who could actually help them to do that. For companies that are looking to bring in talent, then one of the services that we provide is to support them through the visa application process, whether it's people coming from the mainland or from overseas. So our one-to-one support spans often a number of years for a particular company, and yes, it can involve helping and assisting them to recruit staff.
Follow up, Mr. Mataniao? Yes. I think Director General is talking about the talent admission scheme. However, I can say the admission of talents and professionals in Hong Kong cannot be called a success because we could only be able to attract a small number of talents. So what can be done to improve it? Yes, Director General?
Many of the companies that we work with are looking to bring in talented individuals from their own company. And so, we support them to bring people in to head up the operations initially. And then many of those companies then, of course, are looking to recruit local staff, sometimes to replace the expat who they bring in to start with.
Well, members may also recall that for company staff redeploying to local positions, we have a policy under the Immigration Department. We allow visas for these internal transfer staff to come to Hong Kong. And as said by the Director General just now, Invest Hong Kong provides a follow-on service to support these companies. They help them with the applications and they explain the criteria to them. Of course, if they would like to recruit, make new recruitment, then of course they would like to may rely on the talent admission scheme. Next, Deputy Chair, Dr. Ann Chang. I think they'll draw a line here. We are running behind schedule. Dr. Ann Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I recall in those days in Hong Kong we had factories, and in Taiwan there was an industrial park. They would like to attract Hong Kong factories to start their manufacturing process in Taiwan. And at that time, a senior consultant in the Taiwanese government, Mr. Lee Kwok Ding, came to Hong Kong and visited each and every factory in Hong Kong, and he put forward some incentives and concessions and policy support. For example, they have a lot of technical staff, and there would not be a problem in recruiting workers. And for exporting commodities from Taiwan, they also offered a lot of incentives. And the industrial park was Hsinchu Industrial Park, and nowadays we see that the electronic industries are developed quite well as a result of the foundation laid back then. And I read the Director General's progress report. Now, for the way forward, I can see that Director General will be focusing the effort on financial services and IT. That is good, because in the future, the government also intends on enhancing its effort in developing IT. And one important aspect is medical technology. And Hong Kong has a good organization responsible for testing and certification. And now the government is minded to input more resources to this organization.
So is it possible to, in particular, in relation to the mainland and other countries, can Hong Kong serve as a center? Now, for example, mainland factories may export certain medicine to Hong Kong for testing and certification, and then overseas manufacturers can also send their medicine here for testing and certification. So we hope that to attract more investors from the mainland and from other countries to come to Hong Kong. So will you consider doing more in this regard? Yes. Yes. Let me say this. Under CEPA, we are continuing to secure more access opportunities, so that more testing and certification companies in Hong Kong can provide the service to mainland companies. So so because we're responsible for the promotion of CEPA, and I want to say that in fact the various supplements under CEPA have allowed Hong Kong testing and certification companies to provide the service that the member has mentioned. It's true that in the paper we say that we focus on a number of major sectors, but then if you look at the companies that the Invest Hong Kong visits every year and the successful cases, you can see that in fact the successful cases can be spread among various sectors, and I'm sure the department will be willing to do more promotion work in this regard. Yes, thank you very much, Permanent Secretary. I think you've given a very good reply. I hope that those companies can set up their factories in Hong Kong. The factories may not necessarily be very big ones, but at least an end product factory, so that the pharmaceutical products can be exported to overseas countries through Hong Kong. I understand that many overseas companies are interested testing and certification in Hong Kong. Concerning pharmaceutical products. Yes, we are willing to explore this opportunity. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Last year, when we discussed this same issue, I raised this question, and I am raising this question again. Now, we are concerned about the first year of operation of the new companies, all right, how many people they employ. But then we want to know what's going to what happens after the first year. Now, some companies may grow even further, some may shrink in size. So I think it's important that you have those follow-up surveys or tracking surveys. We want to know what happens in the first year and also what happens after the first year. Chairman, I think you have experience operating businesses in the mainland. In the mainland, departments follow up very closely on businesses set up in the mainland. And if we encounter difficulties, such departments are most willing to offer help. And then, and in fact, I also raised this issue last year, and that is the education of people coming to Hong Kong to work. Now, I have a friend. He operates an electronic factory in Hong Kong. In fact, there are very few these entrepreneurs nowadays, and he has staff who come in through the quality migrant scheme, but then they have problems with regard to their children's education. There aren't enough international school places in Hong Kong because many local students study in our international schools. So you can't just keep telling people to come. You have to help resolve their problems. So I think it's important that surveys be conducted concerning their continuous activities in Hong Kong, and we should also help the staff and the investors solve the education problems for their children. I think the Director General can address the first part of the question. Tracking surveys.
In Hong Kong are tasked with supporting companies that are new to Hong Kong through the setting up and establishment of their new office, but they're also responsible for providing aftercare support. And through that aftercare support, about 20% of our projects are helping those companies to go through a significant upgrade or expansion. And we have to get across the message to the foreign and mainland companies that in many respects Invest Hong Kong is the government help desk. If they need help with securing a visa, if they need help with getting a new license, then they should come to us, and then we can try to coordinate the support that they need. Every one of our sector team colleagues has a responsibility to follow up with the companies they helped 12 months ago and 24 months ago to see if there's more that we can do to help. So we have a regular check with those companies. We also engage in a lot of what we call community events in Hong Kong, where we try to arrange networking events for particular sectors to maintain contact with the companies that we've supported. One of the challenges we face, though, is that we need to upgrade our CRM system so that we can collect data in aggregate on the number of jobs that have grown from the companies that we've supported over the past 14 years. But I'm afraid this is a work in progress.
Yes, Chairman. So when companies come to set up their operations in Hong Kong, or when they continue to expand and grow in Hong Kong, we do provide them with follow-up service, including assistance to those who need education services for their children. We'll tell them what international schools there are available here. And in fact, both Invest Hong Kong and our bureau have already told the Education Bureau the difficulties faced by people in getting international school places. And over the years, the Education Bureau tried to make available new sites and empty school premises in order to increase the supply of international school places. Chairman, I really want to know the situation of companies for the coming to Hong Kong to invest, say, in the first 5 years. We want to know whether the number of jobs offered is increasing. We want to know whether these companies are scaling down their operations or upgrading their operations. The system is important, but then I think even if you are to provide the information, compile information manually, you have to do it. Such information is important. Sorry, Mr. Lau, sorry, I was out. I was not in this conference room. because we had a meeting on the visit to Shanghai concerning how to attract inward investments, how to create more jobs. Of course, we support such initiatives. I used to sit on the business facilitation committee, and I understand that the business sector is concerned about high rentals, but even more concerned about lack of international school places. I can remember in the education panel we had a discussion, and I can remember that the representative from the Japanese Chamber of Commerce told us that there were Japanese schools for the Japanese, and then there were international schools for overseas investors. And he said, he told us, can you make sure that your local schools are good so that Hong Kong people will be willing to send their children to local schools so that there will be more international school places available to overseas people, overseas staff. So, you know, there are people who want to come to invest in Hong Kong, to work in Hong Kong, but then they have decided not to come because there aren't school places for their children. And then we are going on the duty visit to Israel. We want to learn from them. I hope that a permanent secretary will also join the visit. And please look at what incentives Israel offers. Israel offers to investors, and without being accused of collaboration between government and the business and transfer of interests. I think what's important is that the rules of the game are clear and transparent. Other cities are doing this. We are lagging behind. We are now at a disadvantage. So, permanent secretary, is it that you've decided not to do anything concerning offering of incentives, or is it that we should try to catch up as quickly as possible? Chairman, concerning international school places, the Education Bureau's policy is that if new sites are made available for international school development, then one of the conditions is that at least 70% of the school places must be for non-local students. It's true that in Hong Kong at the moment, many of the students in international schools are in fact local students. And then how we can attract inward investment, we are in fact constantly reviewing our various policies, services, and incentives. Ms. Lau would like to know what incentives we are offering to outside investors. I want to say that we have these incentives. For example, ITF, I believe members know the ITF very well. We encourage and promote the creative industries, R&D, and we do have the ITF for local and non-local companies to apply. And we do introduce such schemes, incentive schemes to non-local companies. I hope that members will understand that other places may be more proactive and aggressive in attracting inward investment. And some companies have said that so long as there are the incentives, they will stay, and when the incentives lapse, they will leave. All right, so can you try to give me a comparison between what we do here to attract inward investment and what others do, what other cities and places do to attract inward investment? So we know where we stand when we compare with others. But then some governments, they offer incentives to companies on an individual basis, and so we don't know what exactly the incentives offered are. But please do try to give us as much information as possible. Chairman, All right, thank you. Permanent Secretary, I think you know members' concerns, international school places, and also follow-up services. So please don't just be contented when you've attracted them to come. You have to follow up and continue to support them. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda, treatment of parody under the copyright regime.
各議員先，毛孟靜、莫乃光、范國威、郭榮鏗。歡迎秘書長你繼續。
So PS will be staying behind for this item, and we also have Deputy Secretary Mr. David Wong and Ms. Patricia So, Principal Assistant Secretary, and also Ms. Michelle Zhang, Assistant Director of Intellectual Property Copyright. PS, you would like to go through the paper? The paper is quite lengthy, so I will, if Chairman permits, make a more detailed briefing. The government carried out a public consultation exercise from July to November 2013 to explore how our copyright regime should give due regard to present-day circumstances and take care of parody as appropriate to strike a balance between the legitimate interests of copyright owners and users and the general public, and to serve the best interest of Hong Kong. So last December, we reported to members of this panel the consultation outcome and our preliminary observations. Since then, we have continued to communicate with stakeholders and examine the pertinent issues. And at the last meeting, many members would like us to report our progress to the panel again as soon as possible and to update the copyright regime of Hong Kong as soon as possible. So this paper sets out our proposed directions for taking the matter forward on the treatment of parody under the copyright regime. And our aim is to formulate legislative proposals for the current round of update of our copyright regime started in 2006 in line with technological development. And this consultation exercise had to do with the Copyright Amendment Bill 2011. And during the scrutiny period of the bill, the issue of parody arose. And we must pay due regard to present-day circumstances. It's relatively easier for users to make parody of copyrighted works to either comment on current affairs or make their own comments online. Our proposal is that in relation to the parodies suspected of infringing copyright laws, we will provide justifications for these items, and the exemptions will be given in terms of criminal and civil liabilities. Parodies will be given a wider scope of protection and clearer protection than what they enjoyed presently. And parody works not constituting an infringement of copyrights under the existing copyright regime will not be regarded as such in the future. And I'd like to revisit a point at the last meeting. Last time we briefed members on it regarding users or copyright owners. They agree that we should abide by some basic principles in reviewing the copyright regime. That is, we should strike a balance between the legitimate interests of copyright owners and the other public interests, and any criminal exemption or copyright exemption must fully comply with our international obligations, including the relevant agreement containing the three-step test under the World Trade Organization, and any proposed amendment to the copyright ordinance must be sufficiently clear and certain so as to provide a reasonable degree of legal certainty. Now, we also understand that copyright is an intangible property right. It is also an engine driving creativity. However, copyright protection is not without limitations. There are over 60 provisions under the existing copyright laws, allowing for exemptions in certain circumstances. For example, for research, personal use, commenting on current affairs, private study, education, criticism, review, etc. Under these circumstances, copyright works could reasonably be used without attracting any criminal or civil liability. We have drawn reference from overseas examples, including the prevalent situations online and the views of the stakeholders. We are of the view that we can widen the scope of special treatment to provide fair exemptions to certain works. And as set out in the paper, in terms of commentaries on current affairs and parodies, and also other modes, parroting artworks and edited copyright words to facilitate communications or dialogue. Under the proposed broadened scope, if these articles fulfill the criteria, they can be exempted from civil or criminal liability. We would also like to clarify the criminal provisions under the copyright laws in relation to distribution and the proposed publication or communication of parody works, and that is, we should consider whether it can replace the original copyright work or substitute the original copyright work. And after clarifying the criminal liability, we can point out clearly that if certain piece of work cannot substitute the original copyright work, then it will not be caught by the criminal law. So for the work outside the scope of special treatment, as long as it doesn't substitute the original copyright work, it will not attract criminal or civil liability. And during the consultation, some stakeholders also proposed make proposals concerning UGC, user-generated content. And in the paper, we provide quite a detailed analysis and on user-generated content. We have set out at the last meeting as well as in this paper our observations. At this stage, we would like to be able to address the concerns on certain online behavior, as pointed out by some stakeholders. And our proposed scope largely caters for or addresses these concerns. As for user-generated content, before an international trend is formed, we should not provide special treatment for UGC or use the concept of UGC as the core of the subject for special treatment. And last time, many members asked us to continue to communicate with stakeholders and report to members as soon as possible. Apart from seeking views from members this time, we would also like to work in the direction set out in the paper in preparing the legislative proposals. Once completed, we will try our best to conclude our efforts started in 2006 to update our copyright regime. So much for my presentation. Thank you, Chairman. So, members, we have received a paper, CB bracket 1, 1107/1314 is now in front of you. Professor Yu Ka-ming's letter and his proposal. On to questions from members. We have a lot of members, so I'll have a speaking time limit of 4 minutes. First, Mr. Dennis Kwok, Chairman. Now, I'd like to ask about exemptions to criminal liability. I don't see a clear reply from the administration on civil liability. So civil liability rather than criminal liability. I'd like to know the government's position. As in our copyright regime at the moment, we have a scope of exemptions. This is under the existing copyright ordinance. We have a scope of fair dealing. So, if the provisions concerning fair dealings can be met, then the exemption can be given. Yes, I understand the point about fair dealing. What about parody? Will parody be given exemption of civil liability? Our proposal is to use the same concept of fair dealing to cover the 4 areas in the consultation paper: satire, parody, caricature, etc. And also in the paper, we also state we would consider whether commentaries on current affairs could also be exempted. As far as criminal and civil liability is concerned, that is, if these could meet the fair dealing provision. So this comes from the Bar Association's suggestion. Yes. So the third area of consideration, as set out in the paper, is screen capture, which is very prevalent online. That is the screenshot of copyright works or even video clips taken out from copyright work without any editing. It's uploaded online as a means of communication or information being imparted. We also consider whether criminal and civil liability exemptions should be granted. I think ultimately it depends on how the bill is written. So I'd like to know when the specific provisions will be written for us to examine. Of course, if we are to provide such exemptions, we must amend the law. So, having sought the views of members today, we will go back and consider them, and we will start our legislative process. Ultimately, we will table a bill into LegCo, and there will be ample time for members to consider the drafting of provisions. So we're concerned about the criminal and civil liability exemptions. Next, Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of this panel, but I thank you for allowing me to ask this question. Now, this is often criticized as Article 23 of the Internet. Netizens are still dissatisfied. You give them exemptions, but still they face constraints when they do their creative works. They need to consider whether this is about current affairs. If a piece of news, if it's about a piece of news 3 years ago, could it be regarded as current affairs? Is it current enough? And the other criticism is that for user-generated content, the fourth proposal, you rejected them outright. You say that this is not in line with international practice. Well, you didn't say that for universal suffrage. Anyway, thirdly, we always refer the internet as www. etc. etc. It's supposed to be a world wide web, and now you've taken away worldwide. You are trying to localize the internet. It belongs to a state, a nation, or even just a community. Mini internet, just like WhatsApp. There could be a group of 100. So have you considered carefully the impact of future development of the internet on the legislation? P.S. Last December, when we attended this panel meeting, since then we have continued to communicate with copyright owners and stakeholders. We understand that there are different users with different requests. We try to explain to members in this paper this time that for common online behaviors, we try to include them in para 9 of the paper.
As to which of these have to do with freedom of expression and which of these will not affect the interests of copyright owners, we're trying to deal with these. Concerning whether we should adopt the concept of UGC, it depends on what acts there are which may amount to an inadvertent a breach of the legislation. So we want to know more about the concerns of the netizens. We want to know where the uncertainties lie. But in fact, in the paper, we are trying to explain that concerning certain internet acts or behavior, we feel that they are infringement acts. Now, some may say I just use the melody and I put in my own lyrics. Then is there a need to get the consent of the copyright owner? Our view is yes. Chairman, I wish to follow up. So when will you come back to LegCo with the revised proposals? We do not have a timetable in mind, but can you give us a rough estimate? So having heard members' views, we will start the drafting work. Mr. Charles Mock. Chairman, last weekend I was in the U.S. I attended a conference of Hong Kong students. And the students in the U.S. Were quite familiar with the Hong Kong situation, but not entirely. They said that the Article 23 legislation on use of copyright would be enacted. Now, I want to say that, in fact, concerning parody, without the amendments, there is no protection. But it seems that you haven't put your message across very clearly to people. So during the consultation period, you said there would be some protection. Now it seems that you're offering a bit more protection, but of course the protection is still not satisfactory in the eyes of the netizens. But if the bill is not handled properly, then we may be back to square one and all parties will lose. I went to Washington and the officials were very interested in this matter. In other words, in the amendment exercise to the copyright ordinance. I think they are more interested in this than in political reforms in Hong Kong. And they ask us when the copyright ordinance will be amended. Now, a number of examples are listed. So we have fanfiction, Kuso image video capture, and so on and so forth. I want to know whether in the future legislation you will specifically spell out which will be permitted and which will not be permitted, or will you just use the four categories: parody, satire, caricature, and so on and so forth? No, and then of course rewriting lyrics is one thing, but what if I just sing using the same lyrics, and is it that there is no exemption? I mean, earnest performance of copy works. Do you know that in fact in both in Hong Kong and in overseas countries, people posted earnest performance of copyright works on the internet and then became professional singers? And the third question is this: technology advances very rapidly, and the situation may change entirely in a few years' time, or may have changed in a few years' time. So when you table the bill before this council, will you also tell us how long the observation period will be? Now say there are some suggestions from netizens that you find unacceptable at this stage, but will you continue to keep the matter under review? Now in fact these issues were first raised in 2005, 2006. At that time I was not a electrical member, so I just want to know your position in this regard. Yes, Chairman. Now concerning how we're going to put down the exemptions in the bill, so we will be referring to acts like a parody. It's true that in para 9 we've put forward a list of acts, but then there are no standard definitions for such acts. Then posting of earnest performance of copyright works. My understanding is that under the present copyright ordinance, if you have an open performance of a copyright work, you have to get the consent of the copyright owner, and you may have to pay the royalty. So posting of earnest performance of copyright works is tantamount to a public performance, and a royalty is payable. That's why we are saying in the paper that certain exemptions are based on public policy considerations, for example, freedom of expression, and so there should be special treatment. And under the special treatment, the civil and criminal liability can be waived under the fair dealing arrangement. But then for this one, after a very careful study, we don't think this warrants special treatment. I have to stop you because time's up, Permanent Secretary. Mr. Gary Fan. Chairman, I've got two questions. The Bureau will not grant exemption with regard to civil liability for secondary creations. And then para 49 says that civil action may not be taken by the copyright owner because of certain reasons, but it seems that you are putting the responsibility on the copyright owner. But then netizens are still worried. So concerning, you are saying that the preservation of civil or retention of civil liability will help promote creative or creativity. But then, according to many groups, they've received malignant or malicious claims from big companies owning the copyright. So I just want to know whether you can provide across-the-board exemption for secondary creations. And then it is said that UGC cannot be exempted across the board. We are told that UGC is a very broad and vague concept. And so you've proposed special exemptions, but still, special exemptions are vague and unclear. Now, for example, para 24, online posting of earnest performance of copyright works. But then if it is without any parodic, critique, comic, or imitative effects, and it's not related to any current affairs, then that will not be subject to special treatment. But what if we have Chairman Ho and William Hong? In fact, they are performing in earnest. But then people may think there is a comic effect, or what if people intend to create some comic effects, but then the outcome is that people find the performance very obnoxious? Then what's going to happen? Now, concerning parody, current affairs, under fair dealing, both civil and criminal liability can be waived or exempted. Then concerning online posting of earnest performance of copyright works, under the existing ordinance, civil liability may be incurred. And it's for the copyright owners to make claims, because others own the copyright of the lyrics and the melodies. I understand that at the moment there are various acts related to the internet, but we hope to have the copyright legislation to encourage creation, because without such protection, many people will be deterred from being involved in creation or artistic creation. Then is it that others can freely use the lyrics and melodies created with a lot of effort without having to pay a price? Mr. Liu Cheng-Kong. Chairman, I would ask a technical question. Para 11 reads, one principal line of argument for special treatment of the types of works mentioned is that the use of the original copyright works may be transformative in nature or use, resulting in a new message or fresh insight in different contexts, and the label of secondary creation is employed in such instances. So is it that if the uses are transformative in nature, then they are called secondary creation? Because I'm not familiar with the copyright legislation. I have never heard about this concept. So can the administration give us a definition for secondary creation to help us better grasp the concept? Did you coin this term? And no matter who has coined this term, can a clear definition be provided? I think the meaning is not clear. Is it the concept of derivative work under the present copyright legislation? Because I simply don't understand what secondary creation is. Is it derivative work or something else? And then second, yes. So there will be exemptions for secondary creation, but derivative works acquire an an independent copyright which is protected. So what's going to happen to secondary creation? Permanent secretary, we are not proposing to provide special treatment for secondary creation. We're talking about parody, satire, caricature, pastiche, and also current affairs. Now, secondary creation is recreation referred to by netizens. Concerning whether there is a transformative element, different users may have different definitions. Now, say for example, online performance of copyright works, earnest performance. Some think there is this is secondary creation, but is there a transformative element?
Now, what if there is a transformative secondary creation? Does it entail a separate copyright? Yes, indeed. If this is derivative work after transformation, the new work also has a copyright issue. Mr. Martinell, follow up. So, your understanding is that when users talk about secondary creation, it is equal to derivative work that we talk about. Maybe I'll defer to our colleague, not necessarily. Now, you talk about derivative work, and there is a clear definition for it. Basically, it refers to translated and adapted works, and under international laws, there are clear definitions, and that the copyright belongs to the creator. And for parodies engaging in secondary creation, they term their work secondary creation, and regarding them equivalent to derivative work. But actually, for derivative work, it's backed by clear legal provisions. Next, Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. I declare let me declare first of all that I represent the arts and cultural sector, and they welcome this paper. They do not want to want the government to drag its feet. They'd like to see this bill passed as soon as possible. UGC will not be considered, and they welcome it as well. They would like to accept the administration's proposal on the treatment for parodies, but the condition is that this legislative proposal should be proceeded with as soon as possible. We have discussed this issue for over 7 to 8 years. And the sector has been incurring huge losses because of the slow stalling progress. Let me cite you some figures about the losses suffered by the sector. The music industry, the records industry, and the video recording industry, their businesses have declined respectively by 52% and 72%, and that's the figure up to 2011-2012. We don't have the latest figures in 2013 yet, and I understand that the business has further declined, and if this matter is delayed, then these industries will dwindle very quickly. So it's really imminent that the bill be tabled as soon as possible. We talk about Hong Kong and the arts and creative industries being an economic pillar in Hong Kong. It's just empty talk. And a letter has been issued to the 70 electoral members. And I think the letter should be given to or forwarded to the Secretariat as well. Now, this paper doesn't set out the legislative timetable. I note that for the legislative year 2013-14. This bill hasn't been put on the agenda. So my question is, can the administration table the bill within this legislative year? Several members asked me the same question. I can only say that we will, having listened to the views of members, go back and start the drafting of the bill. I cannot tell you a specific timetable now. So after you draft the bill, what will happen? How long do you estimate will that take? Can it be done before July this year or next session? I haven't used up all my time, Chairman. In fact, in 2011, the bill had been tabled into LegCo. Most parts of the bill were agreed. There was only controversy over a small part, so I don't think drafting afresh is necessary. I don't see any reason for stalling this matter. And since the consultation exercise has been, again, several months, I think the administration can make some decisions. The question is whether the administration is minded to table the bill as soon as possible, so that Hong Kong will not be regarded internationally as lagging behind the major trends. P.S. I've heard the member loud and clear. We will work on it as soon as possible. Next, Mr. Ray Chan. I'd like PS to clarify one point. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok just now said because the legislation process is delayed, the industry suffered a lot. But I understand that even under the existing regime, there could be lawsuits. And now, in fact, after if the proposal is implemented, in fact, a greater protection will be given to netizens. So which version is true? Now, I'd also like to ask if my understanding is correct. The administration would like to comply with the three-step test, which is the international standard, and to give exemptions as far as possible. Is my understanding correct? Next question. However, for UGC, user-generated content, the administration is not minded to give exemption or to adopt this concept because it's hard to define and because it cannot pass the three-step test. What if we include the three-step test in the exemption provisions? Will that be feasible? Professor Yu wrote in, and in fact, about the fair dealing aspect, as advocated by the government, yes, it passes the three-step test. So can we adopt the concept of UGC without naming it UGC? Because fair dealing can offer protection. And in the Canada model, you say it's not feasible. It has been implemented by Canada anyway. So has there been any complaint to WTO about the fair usage in the United States? I'd like to know from PS if this is in line with the three-step test or not. PS. In the paper tabled about widening the scope of special treatment, we actually relaxed and broadened the scope of special treatment to address the users' concerns. So under some circumstances, civil and criminal liabilities can be exempted. As to whether we can adopt UGC's concept without naming it UGC, in fact, many users have raised concerns to us whether their online works could incur liabilities, and this is what we're trying to deal with. There is a public policy reason for us to give special treatment to these works. And the so-called special treatment does meet the first step of the three-step test. That is, there must be special circumstances calling for the exemption. It should not be a blanket exemption. So the proposed legislation is this. First of all, we provide exemptions to special cases, not a general exemption. As for UGC, it covers a very wide scope. So we think UGC per se will not be able to meet the first step of the three-step test. Can the three-step test be included in the bill? It's already included. Step 2 and Step 3 are set out in the bill. For Step 1, the test is a special treatment. All right, PS? Yes, Ms. Emily Lau, Chairman. I think PS has also heard us that we all like you to do something as soon as possible. We have views from the sector as well. And maybe you're stuck with something, maybe you're worried about filibustering. But PS, please do something about this article by Professor Yu. It's been accepted by many professionals in the international intellectual property sector. So unless you are not agreeing with this in principle, you should take this forward as soon as possible. Just now, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok said that he accepts your proposal. If you accept Professor Yu's proposal, will his sector object to it immediately? So there will be a struggle between the two. Chairman, we're dealing with users' concerns, and we believe that what we've tabled should be able to address the concerns. I really don't agree that we must use the 3 letters UGC to address these concerns. And in fact, as in para 9, for the behaviors cited, the direction is that, for example, for rewriting lyrics for songs, adaptation, translation, we explain the reasons for not being able to giving treatment to these. About the posting of earnest performance of copyright works, I've explained just now that we don't see a public policy reason to give special treatment to these works. As for the remaining ones, our proposal should be able to deal with them. So, is there a consensus? Of course, we don't make all the decisions. The redrafted bill will have to be scrutinized by the Bills Committee in the future, and then we will decide what the terms or what the terminology entails. So, PS, you've heard from members. They understand that this is a thorny issue. You must strike a balance between different matters, but they all hope that you could work as soon as possible, because for creative artists, they get no protection. So I hope you could redraft the bill as soon as possible, having heard our views, and we hope that before the summer recess you could table the bill. Chairman will try our best. No pressure, but please, as soon as possible. Thank you. Next, item 7. Promotion or new initiatives on promotion of innovation and technology.
又延長咗，因為
The meeting is extended because of this item on copyright. We have until 5, and I welcome from the administration Ms. Janet Wong, Commissioner for Innovation and Technology, and Mr. Johan Wong, Deputy Commissioner for Innovation and Technology, Professor Yu On-ching, Science Advisor, RTC, and Mr. Thomas Tseng, Assistant Director of Intellectual Property.
處長歡迎你。
Welcome, Commissioner. Are you going to take us through the paper? Yes, thank you, Chairman. Last month we gave members a paper on the review of the ITF, and in this paper we are putting forward 3 new initiatives. They can be found in the FSS budget. So I will briefly talk about these 3 initiatives. As members are aware, we have a small entrepreneur research assistance program, or SIRAP. We, after careful study, are of the view that it is not effective enough, and so it will be replaced by the Enterprise Support Scheme, ESS. So what are the advantages of having the ESS? Now, for the present syrup, the amount is 6 million. Under ESS, it will be 10 million. And companies big and small can apply under the ESS. But then for syrup, it is restricted to companies which have less than 100 employees. And under the new scheme, so long as the company has made use of the money for R&D, there is no requirement for fund recoupment or repayment, even if a profit is made or there is third-party investment. I understand that members want more commercialization of R&D outcome, and that's why we are proposing to further extend the scope of the ITF. And we want to promote downstream R&D. For example, industrial design, development engineering, system integration, and so on and so forth. Professor Yu, our science advisor, has talked to the business sector and academia, and has come up with these proposals. And then finally, funding support for universities, so that there can be technology startups. So our proposal is that each university can apply for up to $4 million. And the startup teams can comprise the graduates and also professors on a part-time release basis, and also there can be a prominent or eminent graduates coming back to the university to tell the students how to do business. So concerning the first proposal, using ESS to replace syrup, this represents a major change. Syrup has been one of the 4 designated areas under ITF. Because of this major change, we need to make an application to the Finance Committee. And before we go to Finance Committee, we need to secure the support of the panel first. And with regard to the second and third proposals, involving the adjustment of the scope of the ITF and giving funding to universities, For example, the national laboratories and so on and so forth, we can go ahead with the support of this panel. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liu. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the government has said it encourages the research and development of green technology, but then there is no such policy mentioned in the budget or in the policy address to promote the development of green technology. So the development of green technology is at a standstill. So, will there be policies and support measures to promote the development of green technology? If the answer is no, can you please explain? Is it that you are no longer attaching importance to the development and research in relation to green technology? And then the automobile spare part center. We want to know the difficulties faced by the APAS. And we want to know what the R&D centers are doing in respect of the environmental protection technology development. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, a green technology is the portfolio of the Environment Bureau. But of course, we also support the development of green technology. In fact, the ITF supports nanotechnology, biotechnology, ICT, anything to do with technology or technological development. Now, concerning the projects approved by the ITF, some of them have to do with environmental protection, though I don't really have the figures here. And the science park comprises 5 themes: electronics, IT, and so on and so forth. And in recent years, we've developed 2 new areas, biotechnology and green technology. In the science park, there are a lot of green design features. And there is one building showcasing the features for energy saving and energy efficiency. And there are many companies in the science park involved in the development of green technology. So we haven't given up on this one. And then concerning automotive parts and accessory systems, perhaps Professor Yu can give members a more detailed report.
多謝主席。關於汽車零部
Yes, thank you. So the focus has been on electric vehicles. For example, charging facilities. Now, of course, charging technologies are very common, and we have charging facilities in many places in the world. And we have been studying quick charging. There are basic platform projects, and one company is very interested in this technology, and there is a 50-50 joint program concerning quick charging. It's important that we be able to meet various international standards, and so they're now trying to get a recognition under the Japanese standards. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Chairman, thank you. I would like to refer to para 19 of the paper. Each university can get up to $4 million. I think this sum is really too small. If you look at overseas projects, in particular the critical mass, $4 million is really not enough to achieve the desired effects. So why can't we allocate more resources to the universities? Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman. This is only the beginning. We have talked to the universities and they welcome the initiative. This represents only the beginning. In fact, before we fixed the sum, we had consulted the universities. We asked them what sort of companies they had in mind, and they told us that some of the companies might be very small ones, only hundreds of thousands of dollars. And also in the paper, you can see that ultimately in a year, each company has $1.2 million. So it's a startup. If it is successful, then it will move on to our other schemes. For example, the Science Park Incubation Scheme with a lot of support, including office space support. Or in fact, the startup can migrate to the syrup or the future ESS. This is because if the company has already started for some time, then it's no longer a startup, it's already a technology enterprise. So this is but the beginning, and we carry out a review after 1 year. And if we are of the view that the amounts should be increased, we'll come back to Finance Committee for further funding. Janet for 1982 says each startup will be funded for not more than 3 years, with an annual funding capped at $1.2 million. So do you think 3 years is appropriate? So do you expect these companies to be able to stand on their own feet after 3 years without having to rely on any sort of government funding? Are you being realistic in setting the 3-year timetable? Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Kwok for his question. As the Commission has pointed out, under the ITC and the ITF, there are different support schemes. We have talked to the academia, and we understand that some assistance is needed, in particular during the startup stage. And in fact, at the startup stage, not much funding is required. As the Commissioner has explained, after 1, 2, or 3 years, we basically expect the company to have moved on to another stage so that it will be eligible to apply for other schemes under the ITF, syrup or even the Cyberport or Science Park incubation projects. So I think companies with some products should be able to migrate to that stage. So young graduates may want to start their own business, so they will need some support, a little bit of support. And then after 1, 2, or 3 years, they will be able, or they should be able to migrate to other schemes under the ITF. So it's like moving from kindergarten to primary school, to secondary school, to university, to postgraduate courses. And the startup stage is like the kindergarten stage, and so a little bit of assistance is needed. And it is a 3-year period really too harsh. Now, as the Commissioner has said, this is a new scheme, and we're going to carry out a review 2 or 3 years later with regard to the amount, the scope of the scheme, the duration, and so on and so forth. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Charles Mock. Chairman, I have 2 questions. Now, first of all, I want to ask about the ESS. I don't quite understand what you're saying here. So the government will put in $10 million and then the 50%. Also, it's a total of 20 million. Thank you. Thank you.
Secondly, I see that the biggest difference is that according to the new scheme, the funding will not be you will not collect the funding dispersed. So this is a great encouragement to enterprises, and the funding will not be recouped, and funding will be approved for the projects, and the public will be able to monitor these projects and see if they achieve good results, and see if just a waste of money, see if there are problems with recruiting staff. Because you don't consider the size of companies, and even well-off companies can apply for the scheme. I don't want these misperceptions to get in the way of engaging public support. And companies, on the other hand, I don't want to see too complicated application procedures that may deter companies from applying. So how can you strike a balance between these concerns? And also, can you give me a timetable roughly when the new scheme will come into effect? About the companies under CREP, what will happen to them? Will some suitable enterprises be assisted to move to the new scheme? Because some may find themselves not as fortunate. They may have applied 2 months earlier under the old scheme, and as a result they would need to repay the money. And would there be anything to help them move to the new scheme instead? And also, you talked about supporting the startups, and it's important to build the ecological system. Now, and one important element is venture capital and investors for these startup companies. However, our financial policies are that, for example, crowdfunding, they may not even be legal under the existing laws, and there may be provisions under the existing laws preventing them from doing so. But foreign investors find this a big obstacle. This is not under your ambit. We may have to contact the FSTB to handle this issue. But for promoting the development of innovation technology, we need to have comprehensive policies. So what will be done in these areas? Commissioner, thank you, Mr. Mock, for your question. Now for the ESS, this new scheme, comparing to CREP, I thank Mr. Mock for talking about these points which may attract criticisms. We have been criticized for being too conservative, and comparing to our neighboring economies, we may be lagging behind because investors may be attracted to conduct the business elsewhere. So I thank you for the support for the ITC to act more boldly, and that should be a reasonable and transparent system. Now, Mr. Mock asked, after the funds are dispersed, will they act within the scheme, or will there be any problems with, say, recruitment of staff? And in fact, it's clearly set out under the scheme. Everything is written out, and it's not done on a mandatory basis. They will set out their project plan on what they will achieve in 6 months' time, and we consider whether it's reasonable or not. Now, let's say after 6 months they cannot recruit any staff, they have none or just 2 members, then we will not continue with giving them funding. Because IT covers a very wide scope, we have many professionals to help us with the assessment, and they are figures of credibility. They ensure the proper use of public funds. And in fact, we are revising our computer systems to add the tracking function. So every time an enterprise applies for funding, we look at the track record, unless it changes its name. So if it didn't perform well the first time and it comes again for a second round of funding, it has its reputation to consider. As for larger enterprises, why should we provide funding support for them? Well, we believe that all companies engaging in IT should be supported, because it's developing IT, it's not easy. For larger enterprises, if they come to Hong Kong, we stand to benefit. For example, they create quality jobs, and a decade ago, these IT companies provide strategic R&D, management and marketing positions. They created jobs, and they provided quality training and opportunities to have a global vision. And it's very beneficial to Hong Kong. So we should not differentiate between big and small companies. We should not give up support for larger enterprises. They may collaborate with local R&Ds and universities. And many companies indeed ask me if for some reasons they don't wish to work with the academic sector, then what can be done? Because little resources or little support will be given to these enterprises at the moment. So members also support us in developing a good ecological system, which should comprise smaller and larger enterprises. And our purpose is to build a good ecological system. So that we can develop R&D and angel investors, financial services sector, so on and so forth, as said by Mr. Charles Mock. We also attach importance to them. We don't have much to report as far as the progress is concerned, but we're at the stage of giving enterprises their support. As for the financial aspect, I believe after we finish this round of work, we will proceed with that. Right, next, Ms. Emily Lau. As the Commissioner said, members support the work of your Commission. We hope you can take a big leap and work quicker to achieve some progress. Just now, Deputy Commissioner says that this is the kindergarten. Well, I am really concerned. If this is kindergarten, when will we reach university or even the PhD? Now, Deputy Commissioner, you're really very young, but can you imagine having to pursue your work for decades? Deputy Commissioner, please tell us why you say that this is just a kindergarten. How many years more do we need? Thank you. In fact, in the paper, we mentioned for business startups, these are kindergarten pupils. What we want is to help them in this ecological system, which contains kindergarten students to multinational corporations. We have different assistance schemes and support schemes to help them so that they have more confidence in investing in the IT or R&D in Hong Kong. For young people and business startups, the form of support they need may be incentives, a small amount of funding, or perhaps in Cyberport or the Science Park, office space with a simple setup. As for the ESS, we hope to attract these SMEs under the existing SAROP scheme, as well as larger foreign enterprises, so that you see the enterprises at different stages, from smaller enterprises to larger foreign enterprises, they can also take root in Hong Kong. So how many more years? What does that mean? We already have secondary and university students, so to speak. What the Deputy Commissioner is trying to say is, as soon as young people graduate and start their business, it is a long path for them, all the way to establishing multinational corporations. And at each and every junction of the path, we provide suitable resources. So the concern is unnecessary. We're just talking about the evolution process. Next, Dr. Ann Chang. Thank you, Chairman. Some questions. There are 3 initiatives proposed. Now, A is about supporting enterprises and developing new products and encouraging them in R&D. Are we talking about local R&D enterprises, local brands, local designs? I think basically yes. But if foreign enterprises come to Hong Kong to set up local branches, they can also apply for the scheme. Our main target will be local companies. I think definitely it will not be a U.S. incorporated enterprise coming to Hong Kong to apply for funding under your scheme. Likewise, the Hong Kong incorporated company will not apply for funding overseas. So that may definitely will involve commodities or products developed locally, tax being paid locally. Yes, according to our taxation regime, that should be the case. It should be developed in Hong Kong. So you should make it clear with the IRD, because the purpose of allocating funding for this initiative is to stimulate the GDP growth in Hong Kong, and as your paper puts it, to enhance the standard of technical and professional staff in Hong Kong and provide upward upward mobility opportunities for the young people. So this should be made clear. Yes, thank you. Another point is about universities. I see that the amount of funding is not huge. 6 universities, up to 24 million annually. That means $4 million per university. And also, your new scheme requires these universities to appoint a person in charge working on a full-time basis and committed to that area of work, and the person should be able to supervise the overall operation of the company and to liaise with the university concerned and the ITC on matters relating to the company. I think you may be talking about a middle rank manager with an annual salary of several hundred thousand. So not much money will be left. The government has been subsidizing through different schemes. Now the experience is that there is a lack of downstream initiatives. So I have a request here. They should at least have collaborated with one lineup, one manufacturer, so that they will not work behind closed doors.
So they know very well that they are developing products with a market. So will you consider this? Please consider this suggestion. Yes, I thank Ms. Chang for her suggestion. In fact, some of the members have said that the amount is too small. But as we've explained, this is only the beginning of this new initiative. And also, these are start-ups. And when they grow in scale, they will migrate to other schemes, for example, the Science Park incubation schemes. Why is it that we require a full-time person to be there? Now, in fact, initially, we didn't put in such a requirement. We know that some young people who write apps only do the work after office hours, after their full-time work. But then we're talking about taxpayers' money after all. And if we can't contact them, and if we go to their offices and can't find anybody there, then it will be difficult for us to track the use of public money. And we're talking about $1.2 million, and I don't think we're talking about a very high salary. But anyway, we think it would not be difficult to get at least one full-time person to be in the office. And then as to whether a producer can be found. Now these are start-ups. They may not have reached that stage, but we hope they will succeed ultimately. And so in the team, there may be alumni who are operating manufacturing industries in the mainland. And we hope that these alumni will be willing to produce the products for the universities. But then I think we're talking about start-ups, not about those only writing apps. Yes, time is running out. I believe, Commissioner, you've heard members' views very clearly. We support support the replacement of syrup by ESS and the increase of the amount from $6 million to $10 million. And we really hope to see very good outcome. All right, thank you for coming, Commissioner and your team. And I think it's about time. We're now on item 8 on the agenda, AOB. I don't think we have any AOB items. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.